tell you things you. Yeah, I gotta tell you things you never heard before.
The Medrash says that Yaakov should have never sent angels. He roused them up, and that's why Hashem got, that's why he sent. Otherwise, he could have just came and he could have taken too long. And we see from here that Esav wasn't even living with his parents. He already left his parents a while ago.
Yes and no. I mean, because I did some research on that, and I found that when Yaakov moved back 2 years later to Yitzchak's house, Esav was there with all his wives, it says. And they lived literally in like they did in Russia, like a family cul-de-sac. And I'll tell you why Yaakov moved back there and why he wanted Esav there. Tonight
it says,
that's right.
So
there's a reason for that.
So he wasn't even with his parents. Based on this Rashi.
He used to travel back and forth. He had some of his wives there.
Oh, he had more than 4?
He had something like 3 or 4 wives.
I know he had 3. He had 2, Yehudit and Bosmar.
Right.
And then he had the last one that he married, his cousin.
Correct.
At 63.
Nevayot.
Nevayot.
But Nevayot.
So he had some. And I think it was the daughter of Yishmael that was up there that we have to see. Or maybe he moved one of the Chitis up there. We'll have to see. Okay. So let's talk about some of the things you touched on, but there's something I'm going to tell you that will shock you a little bit, that will be taken a little bit not out of context, but something relatively surprising, which will put things in context, and that thing we'll have next week and the week after and the week after. Vayishak Yaakov Malochim Lefonav. Yaakov sent messengers. Rashi says they weren't just messengers, they were angels, Malachim Mamash. Everybody talks about the fact that how could Yaakov use angels for his own personal, they're heavenly beings. They're not here to do your shopping for you or to handle for you. So the short answer, of course, is that Yaakov was such a person on such a level that to him, sending regular people or angels were the same thing. Like he had angels constantly in his life. That's one answer that they give. Or to go to Esav, regular people didn't want to go to Esav. They were afraid. Only the angels could go. It's possible that the fact that he sent angels would impress Esav. Now, it would mean that Esav could recognize angels from regular people, which growing up in Yitzchak and Rivka's home, maybe he could. And maybe that impacted Esav a little bit. They bring down, just as an interesting lesson, Esav hated Yaakov even before they were born, right? In the womb, there was conflict. Once they were born, it didn't take a long time before Esav hated Yaakov. Halacha Esav sones Yaakov. Yaakov took advantage of him and took the firstborn Shemchai, the Bechor, from him. Then he took the brachos from him. Esav said in his heart, it says that Esav said, when my father dies, I'm going to kill Yaakov. Okay? He thought, remember we said this last week, Yitzchak was 123, he was within 5 years of Sarah's death. So he thought that Yitzchak was an old man, that he was going to die shortly. So he didn't think it was such a long time. But Yitzchak didn't die shortly. Yitzchak kept living on and on and on. So Esav, as much as Esav says, I'm going to wait till Yitzchak dies, they didn't do that. He sent his son, Elipaz. He said to Elipaz, kill Yaakov. And Elipaz comes and says, I got to kill you. My father said, I got to kill you. And, normally I wouldn't do these things, but, in my family, Kibud Av is the principle upon which our whole family is based on. Yaakov says, take all my money. A poor person is like a dead person. Elipaz comes back home and says, Esav says, did you kill him? He says, well, no, but I left him for dead. He's broke. He's a dead man anyway because he has no money. We know what happened. Esav threw him out of the house. Esav took all the money that he took from Yaakov and said, get out of here. The Gemara we brought down, I brought down last week from the Gemaras, that because Elipaz was thrown out of the house, he grew up by Yitzchak. Because he grew up by Yitzchak, he had a 180-degree turnaround. I mentioned to you that one of his best friends was Eov. And the Gemara says that he was the friend with Eov, that he had Ruach HaKodesh, and he was one of the Nevi'im, one of the Nevi'im in the Umas HaOlam. So this Elipaz, the Gemara called him a tzaddik. Now, he had Amalek came from him, but this Elipaz was a total 180 degrees turnaround. So, here is Esav saying, I'm not going to touch Yaakov until Dad dies. And yet constantly we see that thought went out the window. Now, Yaakov's on his way back to Eretz Yisrael. Lavan sends a message to Esau. Yaakov is sneaking across the border. Esau comes with 400 men. According to one opinion, it was 400 generals, right? He was like 400 legions of men. Who knew how many men there were? 20,000 soldiers, whatever it is. Now, if I would have been a betting person, if I would have said to you at that time, Esau is on his way with 400 legions to intercept Yaakov at the border, what do you think is going to happen here?
A huge war.
Yeah, a huge war. You think Esau is going to kill Yaakov? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? What depends on God, whatever it is. Would there anybody, the long shot, the 100-to-1 long shot would be, nah, Esau's going to give Yaakov a hug and a kiss, and they're going to become best friends.
Right.
That's the long shot,
Exchanging gifts and everybody goes.
And everybody goes. There, I send them a few gifts, and I daven a few words to Hashem, and I bow a few times, and all of a sudden Esau gives them a hug. And according to Rashi, one opinion is he tried to bite him on the neck, and the neck turns to marble. Another opinion says he was sincere. And eventually I did look up, and it says that when Yaakov eventually came back, Esau was there in the house, and he wanted Esau around, as we'll see soon. But it doesn't make any sense. I spoke about this Friday night. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Here was a man, his whole life he hated his brother. His whole life he plotted the demise of his brother every single second of the day. And he tried numerous times to get rid of this guy. And all of a sudden, he should have such a turnaround. Why? So if the angels impressed him, and Esau thought, wow, I can never get through to this guy, maybe that's one thing. But there was one of the Rishonim who said that we see from here a fascinating message. You never know somebody. You think you know somebody. People change. People change all the time.
Sure.
I say this very often. Someone comes to me and says, do you know so-and-so? I said, well, yes and no. What do you mean yes and no? Either you know him or you don't know. I said, well, I knew him fairly well about 10 or 15 years ago. I haven't seen him since. So you know him. The answer is no.
Right.
Because knowing a guy from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, means nothing. You don't know the guy.
Same person,
it's not the same person. I don't want to think that I'm the same person I was 5 years ago.
Sure.
And in 5 years from now, I don't want to be the same person I am today. I believe I'm going to grow. Maybe I'll become a little bit calmer. Maybe I'll become a little bit more placid. Maybe I'll turn the other way.
You wouldn't know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know, like, after a certain time, who you're going to meet. The same person?
It's unbelievable. People change.
Right.
And it's just, you can never really know a person. And therefore, here we are, we're reading a story. Esau is marching to Yaakov. They haven't seen each other, 14 years Shem ve'ever, 20 years over there. It's 34 years. Could that relationship change so dramatically in 34 years? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. So someone came and, I was speaking Friday night, so someone said to me, are you telling me that Esau is a tzaddik? I says, no, I'm not going to. Chazal say Esau is not a tzaddik. So I'm not going to say he is a tzaddik. But he changed. Yes, he changed. When Yitzchak dies, Esau and Yaakov bury them together. They work it all out. Esau, we have no more stories of Esau trying to kill Yaakov. That means they're going to be around in the same world for another 40 some odd years. No more stories.
It was a special piece between them.
Yeah.
He went to the right, the other guy to the left, and that was
No
it.
more stories that Esau wanted to kill Yaakov.
Yeah.
So something appeased him also.
Something changed. What changed? Maybe the plan of keeping Esau home under the guidance of Yitzchak changed him. Now, it's interesting that all along Yaakov refers to Avram as his father, not Yitzchak, but after Esau and him somehow meet and things calm down, he refers to Yitzchak as his father. Now, he still doesn't go back home. It takes him another 2 years to go back home, and by that time Rivka is gone, but he goes back home. And I saw in one of the Midrashim that he heard that Esau had a house right next to his father, and Yaakov moved into the family compound. Now, one of the Midrashim said why he moved in was because they just had the whole story with Shechem, which we're going to talk about. And Yaakov was very much afraid, right, that after his brothers, after his children killed out the city of Shechem, people would take revenge against him, right?
Yes.
So Yaakov moved back home,
Yaakov.
and when he heard Esau was there with all his soldiers, Yaakov was very happy. Because he believed that if Esau was there with all his soldiers, no one's going to start up. He was safe. So he actually moved back home to be closer to Esau, so Esau should protect him. Now,
Well, the fear of competition was long.
long gone, and it was gone.
It was gone. That was created a good scenario.
So here we have
Yes.
two people who hate each other,
Right.
who vowed to destroy each other, and that changed. That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
It's interesting. Now, the next thing is a shocker. Now, at first I was researching it, and it came up, and I mentioned it to a Rav today, and he told me, he brought me a different riot to support this. Listen to this. It's really an amazing little fact. In Parshas Chayei Sarah, at the end of Chayei Sarah, the very end of Chayei Sarah, it says that Avram Avinu died. It says that he got married, and then it comes to Ve'eli Yemei Shnei Chayei Avram Asher Chai. These are the years. Avram lived 175 years. Vayikva, he expired. Vayomos, he died. Avram B'Seva Tova Zokein V'Sovei. And Yishmael, Yitzchak and Yishmael buried him. The end of Chayei Sarah. One problem. Avram lived after this pasuk was written another 40 years. 40 years. We know that in Parshas Toldos, when Yitzchak had Yaakov and Esau, Avram was still alive for 15 years. Right?
Sure.
They were together.
Yes.
We know that in Parshas Toldos, when it says that Yaakov was cooking beans, why was he cooking beans? Avram
That was
died,
Abel,
and
yeah.
that was Abel. So logic says the Torah should have written after the birth of Yaakov and Esau. The Torah should have written, and Avram died, and Yaakov was cooking beans, and Esau came from the field. Doesn't do that. It records Avraham Avinu's death in Chayei Sarah. Got it. This week, Parshas Vayishlach. What happens in Parshas Vayishlach? We get to the end of Parshas Vayishlach. It says, Vayhi Yemei Yitzchak. Yitzchak lived 180 years. Vayigva Yitzchak Vayomos. He died. Vayesaf al Amo. Zokein v'Sava Yomim. He was old. He was satisfied. Esau and Yaakov buried him. Problem is, again, Yitzchak didn't die now in Parshas Vayishlach. He lived another 30 or 40 years. Yitzchak was alive when they sold Yosef. He was alive when Yehuda and Tamar story took place. He was around. According to some, he was on the base then. Different people. So here we're telling Yitzchak died in Parshas Vayishlach, when really it should be written 40 years later. So I saw a shocking thing. This Pirush on Chumash, this one of the Rishonim, he says that the Avos and the Imahos were a team. And when the mother died, the father retired. He was no longer considered an Av. So in Chayei Sarah, Sarah died. The minute Sarah died, Avram was no longer had the power of being one of the Avot. Sarah's gone. The partnership broke. That was it. And he finds a wife for Yitzchak right away. Yitzchak gets married to Rivka, and Avram's death is recorded. He's dead. Who's now in charge of the family? Yitzchak and Rivka. In Vayishlach, Rivka dies. Rivka dies, guess what? Yitzchak is dead. His death is recorded in Vayishlach. When Rivka dies, Yitzchak, although he's going to live 40 years, he's not in charge. The mantle, the torch, is passed to who? To Yaakov. Vayishlach. Who dies in Vayishlach? Rachel and Leah. Rachel's death is recorded. Leah happened a few years later. They're dead. Yaakov is no longer in charge. Shechem takes Dinah. They come back home. What is Yaakov's response to the crisis?
Anger.
Nothing.
Right.
No,
Doesn't
it
say a
was
word.
upset with them that they did it.
Vayidom.
Right.
He's not in
No, but
charge.
he was obviously angry after.
No, the Rishon says he's not in charge. It's not his decision anymore. He's no longer. Rachel and Leah are gone.
How about Mitzrayim? He go to Mitzrayim.
1 second. Who's in charge? The children now. The torch passes to the children. So Shimon and Levi take charge.
Yeah.
Comes Parshas Vayeshev. Who's in charge? Yosef.
That's it.
And the brothers say, no, Yosef, you can't be the Melech. Who's the Melech?
Yudah.
Yehuda. And everybody says, what are you talking about? Yehuda, Yosef, king, Shimon, Levi. Yaakov is right there. Yaakov is alive and well to Vayechi. The answer is no. Parshas Vayeshev, Parshas Miketh, Parshas Vayigash. It's all about the brothers, the Shvatim. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, all about them. Nothing to do with Yaakov. Yaakov could be around for another 40 years. He's not in a decision-making position. Why? He's half. So someone brought down to me a Marsha on one of the Gemaras that says that a husband and wife, when they work together, the Shekhinah's with them. Then the Marsha says, but if the wife passes away, the Eitzah, the knowledge and the sense and the advice that the man had goes with her. The minute she's gone, he's no longer considered the leader if he was the leader. That's what a Marsha brings out. So one of the Rabbanim that I was speaking to, Rabbi Mattel, he was saying to me, he says that's exactly what Chazal say, that it's just an amazing thing, that once it happened, once they were gone, then Yaakov was not in charge. And that's why he says, this is what he says, when Dinah was taken, he was no longer there, no longer in charge. Now, let's take a moment to understand what happened. Yaakov comes back. He settles in Shechem. He doesn't go back home yet. That happens after the whole story with Shechem, that he wants to go back home. But it says that Shechem ben Hamor saw Dinah. Okay? And he took her. Now,
It wasn't like that, Rabbi. You know, they had a big parade on the street in order to catch her attention. And when she came to see the parade, he saw her. You know, he sent a bunch of females with tukim, cholot, and she came out to see what is the commotion. And he saw her, and then it happened.
whatever, however he planned it. Of course, the Torah and the Chachamim point fingers. There's right away fingers. Who's responsible for what happened with Dinah?
Yaakov.
Yeah, father.
First is Leah, because Leah used to go out a lot, so Dinah's like her mother. Then it was Yaakov, because he put Dinah in a box, and then let Esau. Of course, you know, it's just like you're blaming everybody around. I mean, who's really responsible is Shechem, you know.
Sure.
Shechem took her.
He's the villain.
He's the villain. Okay, so now he took her. So the first question that comes up, and you know, in the list of questions was that when Shechem, obviously, Shechem came to Yaakov, the brothers were away, and Shechem comes to Yaakov, and he says, with his father, who's the king of the whole area, and he says, I want you to know that my son loves your daughter, and I'm here to negotiate a marriage.
How old was Dinah? Because
How old was she? One opinion was she was 8. Let's say she was a little bit older. But in those days, you know,
Different,
people was a little bit different. At any rate, if you were Yaakov, you know, under normal story, let's say today, if this would happen, what you would probably say to Shechem is, you want to talk about marrying my daughter? Not a problem. I'm open to conversation. But she has to be home first.
yeah,
That means I'm not going to negotiate with a gun to my head. You don't kidnap my daughter and then tell me you love her and you want to marry her when my daughter's not home.
like
First of all, I want to know what she feels. That means Rivka, even when they took Rivka, they asked Rivka, do you want to go?
Yeah, would you want to?
Do you want to marry her?
You want to take a couple of days to think about
Whatever,
it?
but you know,
Yeah.
so nowhere does it say that. That means the first response, before you talk about revenge and plotting and capturing, whatever it is, the first question that everybody wants to know is, Yaakov should have said to Shechem, if you love her, send her home. Let her come home to mom and dad, and we'll talk to her, and we'll see what the story is.
These are like terrorists.
They do.
Like hostages.
Right, like what's going on in Haiti. They took
Right.
15 people, they returned 2. I don't know if they got paid, but the other 12 they're keeping, or 13 they're keeping, and let's talk.
Sure.
We love them, we want to marry them, you know.
Yeah.
Like, or Boca, whatever it is, there's this
To
terrorist
show
group.
you power that they in control.
Okay, so the short answer is, Yaakov must have thought, number one, if I ask for them to return Dinah, the answer is no. So why ask when the answer is no? That's number one. Number two is he didn't know at this point what Dinah's feelings were. That means, is Dinah there crying, I want to go home?
Probably in shock.
We don't know.
Wait, did he know that she was already defiled or no?
Yes, it says he knew she was already defiled. Did he know she was pregnant?
Oh,
No.
Probably not that fact.
no.
And the question is,
One night and then
So for how long she was there?
and that's the question,
No,
there's
I mean,
no
that's-
record of how long she was there, but I suspect it was more
The
than a
Midrash
day.
said
Of
that
course.
Yaakov was in Sukkot 18 months. That's
Right,
why
yes.
about the pregnancy
Correct.
of
Rachel was
Yes.
מעוברת
It
to
was
years.
gonna be because the
Rachel
Gemara
was מעוברת
said
2
there
years.
is no 1 year. The Gemara said
Yeah.
that there is no woman that can be pregnant more than 1 year.
Yeah, and it was. It can
And the
happen 1
reason
year.
why the Gemara has to say that, and
Right.
they say that there was an exception, was because Esau came at the beginning of those 18 months, and they say she was already pregnant with Binyamin. That even though she bowed, Binyamin never bowed to Esau.
So she delivered Benjamin in Bethel.
In Bethel,
Because Hashem
which
wanted him
might
to
have
be.
They explained that she was behind Yosef because Yosef was first.
That's right.
So when he bowed, she actually was bending.
קצת,
So she didn't want Esav to see her.
Right.
Right.
And
That's
didn't
what
know
they
this was
explained.
That's why Mordechai Yehudi didn't bounce
So
from
they
the
didn't say
because
it's
it's
And that's why
coming
they
from
didn't know about the
Benjamin.
pregnancy. But here, so your question is a good question. See,
That's what the Gemara said. There is no woman
but your
pregnant
question
more than 1 year.
So your question is a good question.
And this is 18 months.
How long was Dinah
Right.
by Shechem? We don't know.
We don't know.
I
It
heard
was
6
at least
months.
3 days.
At least a few days.
It was
And,
because
and then
the
she was
third day.
pregnant. You know,
Rabbi, I heard 6 months.
and it could be.
Yes.
So here is Yaakov. Yaakov could have said, return my wife. It didn't happen. I mean, I have a case now.
My daughter,
It's not a
not my
first
wife.
marriage, it's a second marriage. You know, the husband said, oh, I love my wife, I love my wife. The last time she was around, he got a copy of her car keys, and when she parked the car, he had one of his kids drive the car away and hide it so she couldn't go away. He emptied all her bank accounts so she has no money. But I love her. So I said, you know, they said, well, you love her. Could you hand me over the second set of car keys? Because